In September this year, the South Korean original TV drama Squid Game was released on Netflix, where it quickly became the most popular non-English original series on the video platform and one of the most watched shows on the internet. Much like the 2019 movie Parasite, the show focuses on social and economic inequality in South Korea. What has made the show so popular? What makes it so attractive to viewers around the world, regardless of language, class, and culture? So to discuss how art may be imitating life in this recent hit drama, I'm joined today by Teng Jimeng, a professor at Beijing Foreign Studies University and a film critic, and Samuel Park, marketing manager of Universal Music Group, and Benoit Hardy Chachuang, a direct professor of political science and international affairs at Temple University, Japan. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thank you for joining the show. I will start with Benoit. I want to know your gut feeling after you watched the show. What's your first response?
Well, I recently started the show and just finished it today, as a matter of fact, and it's been a very interesting viewing experience. I was aware of the hype for several weeks, several months. For some reason, I waited a little bit before enjoying the show, and I must say that it was worth the wait. It's a very good show. It's very well done. The acting is excellent. It's gripping. It's very difficult to stop watching until the end. So now that I've been one of the millions of people who have watched it, I can say that I do understand the hype surrounding the show. It's a very, very good show.
Mm-hmm. Well, Samuel, you are based in South Korea. You must feel maybe familiar with the plot, with the story, and with the background in particular, I would say.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, for the 2 weeks that was after it was released, I think that was the most talked issue amongst the people around me. And if it was binge eating, I think this is the first time for a long time that I've been binge watching a series so far. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jimeng, did you feel after probably watched all the show nonstop?
Well, it's absolutely shocking and at the same time entertaining. As you know, that the show became went viral on the internet here in China. Almost it becomes a sort of the talk of the town. People have been talking about it. People have been debating about this, and people actually talked about the relevance and the resonance here in China. And so I'm also kind of feeling excited at the moment, and I'm looking forward to this very interesting debate and perhaps interesting sort of discussion of this very TV drama from our neighboring country, which I admire so much cinematically and in terms of TV and cultural productions in general.
Before we started to explore this, this movie, this show, let's take a look at some of the comments online. Well, here is one. What if I told you Squid Game is a must-watch because it shows you how the average person is a cog in the machine being crushed by crippling debt and social issue. Money as a motivator or prize only works until you realize you'll be depressed anyway if you have nothing to fight for. Let's take a look at another comment probably. For American movies, the social inequality and capitalism part is more of a backdrop that motivates the characters and the story instead of the entire movie, which is supposed to be symbolic, like a Parasite and a Squid Game. The closest movie that I can think of, literally, just the Hunger Games. Interesting, comments over there. Again, Jim, I want to start with you here. Some compared it to, Parasite, Hunger Games. What's your response? Are they similar in a way?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I think the very sort of portrayal of capitalism's misery, the very shocking and also the very gory side of this very competition that we all know that kind of now being prevalent in all capitalistic countries. And so I'm very much kind of impressed by this very comment, and I think I would need to dig deeper into this very comment and of this very TV drama. But simply put, I think Squid Game's dystopia, and it is the contemporary world. It is to me, this is supposed to be like a metaphor of a phenomenon of the 21st century capitalist world. And so it is an allegory. It is a metaphor of the ongoing contradictions in the capitalist society.
Samuel, the comments made by some of the people, they say the average person is a cog in a machine being crushed by that issue and other social issues. Do you agree?
Yeah, in some ways, when I was watching the series myself, there were a lot of parts where I really could relate. And when the critiques say that it really resonates with the society we live in right now, it sort of speaks out for the voiceless individuals in our society right now, especially when they have the roles of North Korean defectees or migrant workers or long-term unemployed and mental health issued individuals. So these are the people that really are existing in our society, which we don't really happen to meet every day, but they are here and they are living this world. So there's a lot of parts that really shocks you, but also makes you think once more to really take grasp of the life here.
Well, Benoit, obviously on the platform, Netflix, in its entire history, this is the most popular show, and also it ranked #1 in 94 countries, probably counting. So I wonder, what makes it so easily relatable for people, for the viewers, when they watch the show, somehow it's related to their own real life.
Well, I think the show, it features a universal story. It's a universal story of survival in front of very difficult odds, and I think that makes the show appealing to a very wide audience. It has a wide variety of characters, as the previous guest was mentioning, characters that can appeal to a broad range of people, and it also, I think, connects with a large number of people around the globe simply because of this the rising inequality that we see, and the fact that the show depicts this very reality of people who find themselves in very, very difficult financial situation and who are facing a kind of an enemy, an elite that remains faceless. And this is the reality of our world today. A lot of people, and this is not necessarily to say that this is false or that this is accurate, but this is the sentiment that a lot of people that are downtrodden around the world feel. They feel like this world is being controlled by people who they can't see, who they can't be in contact with. And this is kind of the reality that is depicted in the show. So it's both a combination, I think, of really deep, good characters, a universal story of survival, and this allegory of our current society, which I think has made this show the universal phenomenon that it is.
Well, Benoit, you mentioned a very interesting point. Do you think people, average watchers, do you think they're related to, somehow they are similar to the game players, for survival, for the prize? And of course, sometimes you will be sacrificed. And also, or are they similar to the guards, also faceless? You do what you are told to do, and basically you have your own initiative, right?
No, that's exactly that. It's the feeling, the powerless, the feeling of being powerless in front of forces that are simply too strong for you to combat. People, force that you cannot see, as I mentioned. All the characters, the bad guys of the movie, so to speak, are all faceless. You barely can ever see their faces, and so there are deep similarities. Obviously, it remains a fiction, obviously, but there's some such close connections and that we can draw with our current realities. And so again, this really makes the show appealing. And of course, the numbers that you just mentioned in your previous question do bear this reality out.
Well, Samuel, obviously this show, we see this gap between rich and poor. The rich, they design the show and they have fun to see people got killed or killing each other. And of course, the powerless, basically, you fight for your survival. How big an issue is, let's say, the gap between rich and poor in South Korea?
It's quite realistic in a way that they do discuss about the issue on debt and inequality, discrimination, unemployment, suicidal and divorce rates, and the list just goes on. These are things that really, when the viewers watched it, it really makes you sort of relate, and sometimes it could be the people around you. It could be your friend, it could be your relative, it could be just a neighbor that lives right across the street. So these issues that are played in the roles from these characters really make the audience and makes me really just sort of attached to the story.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point there. Jim, at the same time, I would say it also reflects somehow the human nature, nature of being greedy, for example, sometimes at least being selfish. You fight for yourself, and probably you don't care much about others because of, survive. You have to survive for yourself. So you are for yourself. That kind of nature is somehow also, I would say, quite fully reflected in the plot.
Well, absolutely. But to me, it's not that kind of an inherent human nature that determines the very sort of character development. I think we need to situate the characters in this very drama, series, into that very specific context, and that very specific context is capitalism in South Korea. And basically, the central message of the TV drama is how corrupt this very capitalism in South Korea and perhaps in the broader world can be. And so this very human nature is fostered by this very corrupt system, by this very violent system. Look at the people on the red side. I mean, they are actually supervising, they were manipulating, they're controlling with guns, with submachine guns, and with the faceless, with the mask covering their faces. And this is a pure kind of a Marxist notion of this alienation. You were alienated. You yourself were alienated by this force of capitalism, of this capital that force you into this very trap. I mean, the trap is that even if you work hard, the so-called you work hard, you prosper. But then everything, said, every single character in the very green camp, all these guys in green jacket are actually enslaved by capitals and enslaved by capitalists and forced into that very trap. Look at all these slew of characters. They have one thing in common. They're all in debt, they're all in desperation, and they're all forced to kill. And so that human nature is fostered by this very evil, by this very corrupt system.
Interesting. Benoit, obviously, I think people in general would agree there's some problem with capitalism, with the current capitalism, let's say. I remember, after the 2007, 2008 financial crisis, there was a lot of talk of the, problems with capitalism. For example, companies, they are responsible, they're answering to the investors. Probably they don't care much about the customers or the society. And then people would say probably they should care a lot more about the society too. For example, in Japan, the new prime minister is talking about new capitalism. Obviously, he sees some problem with the current practice of capitalism.
Right, indeed. Well, these criticisms of capitalism are not new. We've seen these criticisms ever since the Industrial Revolution of the late 18th century and probably even before that. I think the issue is with unbridled, deregulated capitalism, which leads to some of the excesses that we have seen over the last few years. This is what leads to this deep inequality that we also see in so many countries. And this deep inequality, which often leads to a breakdown in the social fabric, leads to a rise in crime. But this is again, this kind of unfettered form of capitalism where there which is promoted by certain leading figures in capitalism. But capitalism, let's remember, it doesn't have only to follow this one particular way. We see capitalism, which is more control, where the government has more control over the system. We see that in social democratic countries of Northern Europe, for example. I'm thinking, for example, of Norway, Sweden, Finland, where these are countries that are basically capitalistic, but that still follow a model with a much greater social safety net for the people. And as a result of that, you still have, under a capitalist system, a situation where there's much less inequality, much better socioeconomic indicators. So there's not only one form of course, of capitalism. But indeed, it remains an important concept, an important topic, this inequality in many countries around the world. And as you mentioned very rightly, the new Prime Minister in Japan, Kishida, has promised that he would tackle this growing inequality in Japan, because Japan used to be a country with a very large middle class, and now we have fewer and fewer people who think that they are a part of that middle class. So it is something that the Prime Minister has promised to tackle.
Mm-hmm. Well, Samuel, what is the situation in South Korea? You know, on October 20th, there was a nationwide protest demanding job security, and some of the protesters dressed in Squid Game costume. Obviously, they feel related. They feel they are similar, probably, in terms of their social status, their situation over there. How big a problem is that in terms of practicing capitalism, you know, gap between rich and the poor? You know, fewer people think they belong to this middle class.
Yes, like what we just discussed earlier, this issue isn't new, and it's continuously being an issue depicted in movies, contents, and in several aspects of media. But I'm very amused on how they could use such trend to sort of voice their, thoughts out to the society. So whenever I believe that when they wear that, or when they show themselves as that kind of character, it's to really show the widening gap and the problem, and they want to voice that out to the society, telling them that, you know, we are here and we need help. And just like the series, these people are people that we don't see on a regular basis, but through these kind of series, or through these kind of contents, it is a chance that they could voice their opinions out and really speak out to the society. So I believe that it's quite interesting how they really use that as a tool to speak their opinion. And I believe there's going to be more of this going to happen in Korea and across the world.
At least it's a very creative way, you know, of expressing their opinions or their opposition to the reality. Well, in the U.S., the top 10%, own nearly 70% of the country's wealth, and of course, this is not the new issue. The gap between rich and poor, we know that since the financial crisis in 2008, we have this all kinds of movement. For example, Occupy Wall Street, and also Occupy this and that in European countries too. Are we seeing progress over the past years since the financial crisis, Benoit?
Yes, well, I think since the financial crisis, the issue of inequality has been certainly more at the forefront of global politics. We've seen that in Western countries as well as in Asia, and we've seen this with global movements as well, social movements, which have been much more powerful, which have gained ground in many different societies. What remains to be seen, is to see whether these movements and these calls for greater action to decrease this inequality will lead to actual policies and actual programs that will make a dent into this inequality that has been such a massive problem in many societies around the world.
Okay, before we continue to explore this topic, let's take a look at other comments online. Well, this one, if you don't understand the ending of Squid Game, then you don't understand the point of the show and what it takes to fight against capitalism and change the system of serfdom we live in. So the point of the game and the ending. Okay, Jimeng, what is the point of the show?
Once again, I think the central message is it demonstrates this very desperation, this very frustration, desperation that individuals living in that very society just manage to struggle. I mean, you just cannot find a way out for yourself, or to survive, you have to resort to radical means. You have to resort to this very killing. In a sense, it is about this very fierce competition, this very rugged individualism that has been prevailing in 19th century America. And so in this case, the ending of that very film is so very enlightening that capitalist societies may not help, may not salvage humanity. In a sense, I think it is a serious warning that perhaps we need to look around and look the other way and find a new way for humanity to survive and to thrive. The very central character actually had to kill to survive is the most brutal actually kind of a warning, dire warning to all humanity that you have to kill to survive. And which is the polar opposite of Marxism, Marx's description of an ideal society in which that all human potential got to be tapped on and actually being encouraged to survive in cooperation, in harmony, by living and working in harmony, and by working to the fullest of your potential. So Quid Games is about survival. Quid Games is about game theory. Quid Game is about zero-sum game. In this sense, I think the directors of this whole theories are actually enlightening the world of capitalism. Perhaps this very competition, perhaps this very kind of a brutal reality may not salvage ourselves. It may not save the world. Perhaps we need to look around and look the other way. Otherwise, you will all end up being manipulated, being actually kind of killing each other. The tragedy is that you end up killing each other, leaving only a teeny tiny rich few out there. I mean, laughing, perhaps kind of jeering. Look at the man in black suit. The very end of it is this guy actually trying to come up with a most valuable teaching. I mean, without money, with money, perhaps you will be more miserable. And so in this sense, I think the ending is so very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Samuel, what do you see as the point of the show?
Like I said, I feel like after watching the series, it is a mirror to our society, and it really resonates with the situation that we are currently in. And the point that is really astonishing and somewhat disturbing and realistic at the same time is the fact that there was a consensus. So the contestants, they actually choose to continue on with the participating in the game. So it's speaking the fact that, either this way or that way, it's going to be the same result, so why not try? And this really just shows, like what we mentioned earlier, that this is maybe a thing that we really have a problem with, and there's no solution or a way of solving this at the moment. But at the same time, the ending sort of really shows a glimpse of hope, but somewhat a lesson at the same time. But overall, I believe it is a mirror, and I believe it really shows what we're going through right now, and there's nothing exaggerated.
Mm-hmm. Benoit, a gleam of hope, or can we find the key to solve the problem? What's the fix of that kind of capitalism as described in the game?
Right. Well, the two other guests had really good answers. I'm not sure what much more to add to what they said, but I think, as I mentioned in a previous answer, what we need is not necessarily to break down the system, but to better control it. It is this kind of unfettered, unbridled capitalism that leads to a lot of the ills that we see currently in our world. And I think with smart government regulations, which there has been a push for over the last few years, which I mentioned previously, I think we can already start making our way towards a more just and fair world.
a follow-up to Benoit, what you said. If you look at the world right now, you see, we talked about in the U.S., some of the left-wing politicians are calling for, taxing the rich, for example. In Japan, we're talking about, this basically distribution of wealth, the new capitalism by the new government over there. And in China, people are talking about common prosperity. And in Russia, President Putin is talking about poverty as almost the #1 enemy of the country. So I would say there's a lot of awareness about the problem we are facing. So hopefully we can fix that problem soon.
Well, sure. What I was thinking about when you were mentioning what Putin has said, what President Xi Jinping has said, and what Prime Minister Kishida here has said in Japan is the issue is not necessarily the lack of awareness, and that was very well said in your question. The issue is rather if they can find the political will and the support as well among not only the political system, among the elites, political elites, as well as among their constituents to really go forward and bring about, to adopt and establish these policies that are required to bring about, as I mentioned, this more fair and more equitable world that most of us hope that we can live in.
Okay.
If I may, this very interesting discussion reminds me of a previous kind of survey done in the United States. It's almost like about 20% or even 30%. I forget about the figures of young people. Young people in the States, college age and college students, believe in socialism. Bernie Sanders actually had a huge kind of a role model kind of an impact on this very college generation. And so with Bernie Sanders promoting his socialist philosophy, many of the young people are really looking to socialism in the States.
Maybe that will help